a murder at the shooting range. Russian airports are closing again, and new Patriots are on their way to Ukraine. These are just a few of the topics I'll be covering today on TSN. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, watch the broadcast, and let us know in the comments what you found most interesting. And here's what else we have news about. A new prime minister, a new cabinet, but familiar faces. How Parliament voted for Yulia Sviridenko's cabinet, which ministries are gone, and who didn't keep their positions in the government. Shahid terror in the Dnipropetrovsk region. The Russians treacherously struck a second time, just as rescuers had arrived at the scene. What is known about the dead and wounded? The new prime minister is now official. Yulia Sviridenko was approved for this position today by the members of parliament. Her candidacy was presented in parliament by President Volodymyr Zelensky. The head of state expects the new government to audit all agreements, contracts, and memorandums with partners in the field of defense and arms production. Along with strengthening the country's internal economic potential, he says this should give our soldiers more confidence on the battlefield. The new prime minister promises that in her first 6 months in office, she will achieve an increase in domestic weapons production for the armed forces of Ukraine, strengthen the military technologically, support businesses, and optimize the state apparatus. Sviridenko announced the new government course aimed at economic, military, and social self-sufficiency.
I want every Ukrainian to feel real, positive changes. We have already started working on optimizing the state apparatus and are moving towards a full audit of expenditures with the aim of reducing them. No political loyalty. Numbers and results matter. Ukraine will be ready in all negotiation clusters. We will continue our European integration and keep moving towards NATO.
The second Yulia in Ukraine's history to sit in the prime minister's chair. So, who is the new head of government? Yulia Sviridenko is 39 years old. She has spent 10 of those years in public service and politics. In 2015, she tried to get elected to the city council in her hometown of Chernihiv, but that attempt failed. Instead, she became an advisor to the head of the Chernihiv Regional State Administration. Later, she went on to head that regional administration as acting chief. Sviridenko's career in the public sector took off rapidly when Volodymyr Zelensky became president of Ukraine and a servant of the People Party gained a majority in the Verkhovna Rada. In the fall of 2019, Yulia became the Deputy Minister of Economic Development, Trade, and Agriculture. And just over a year later, she became the Deputy Head of the President's Office under Andriy Yermak. From there, she moved on to the position of First Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Economy. During the full-scale invasion, Sviridenko negotiated with allied countries to strengthen sanctions against Russia. She was the one who prepared the agreements on Ukrainian mineral resources, which were of such great interest to American President Donald Trump. And she was also the one who signed it on behalf of Ukraine. Colleagues describe Yulia Sviridenko as ambitious, and she has repeatedly admitted in her speeches that she prepares every project thoroughly and always gets nervous before presenting. And last year, she surprised representatives of foreign organizations and diplomatic missions when she suddenly sat down at the piano and played Chervona Ruda.
First of all, I want to say that I always get very nervous, because for me, as you know, I studied at a music school, and we used to have recital concerts. So I consider this a kind of report for me as well.
Because your exquisite beauty is truly like pure, crystal clear water, much like the incredibly swift and refreshing water that flows gracefully from the majestic blue mountains.
You can start filming.
Congratulations on the appointment of Yulia Sviridenko as Prime Minister have already been expressed by the President of the European Commission. On her page on the social network X, Ursula von der Leyen wrote, and I quote, "We fully support you in your fight for Ukraine's survival and in your work to rebuild your country and its future in the EU." The President of the European Commission also thanked Denis Shmyhal for his cooperation and wished him luck in his new position as Minister of Defense. And now we have a new cabinet of ministers. On the recommendation of Prime Minister Yulia Sviridenko, the Verkhovna Rada voted for the government as a package. 253 votes were cast in favor. So Mikhail Fedorov became the first deputy prime minister, who is also responsible for innovation. The position of deputy prime minister for European and Euro-Atlantic integration was taken by Taras Kochka, while Oleksiy Kuleba remained deputy prime minister for reconstruction and minister for communities and territories development. The Ministry of Economy was indeed merged with the Ministry of Ecology and the Ministry of Agrarian Policy, and Oleksiy Sobolev was appointed as its head. The Ministry of Energy was handed over to Svetlana Hrinchuk, who until now was the head of the Ministry of Ecology. The Ministry of Social Policy, instead of Oksana Zolnovik, is now headed by Denis Yuliutin. Previously, he was the first Deputy Minister of Finance, and the ministry itself received a new name, the Ministry of Social Policy, Family, and Unity of Ukraine. The Ministry of Justice will now be headed by Herman Halashchenko, who previously served as Minister of Energy. Two separate nominations from the President for the Minister of Defense and the Minister of Foreign Affairs were voted on separately. Former Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal has taken charge of the revamped Ministry of Defense, which will now be merged with the Ministry of Strategic Industries. And Andriy Sobiga has retained his position at the country's main diplomatic agency. The Ministers for Veterans Affairs, Internal Affairs, Health, Finance, Youth and Sports, as well as Education and Science, are remaining in their positions. However, the position of Minister of Culture is still vacant. Dnipro region withstood a massive drone attack. There are dead and wounded. Explosions were heard in Kryvyi Rih, Dnipro, and Nikopol. Old Pavlovska will tell us more about the consequences of the night and morning shelling.
Explosions one after another. The occupiers attacked the Dnipropetrovsk region with dozens of shahids in several waves. All night, explosions rang out in Dnipro, and from the morning in Kryvyi Rih. A column of smoke in Kryvyi Rih. A woman was wounded. In Dnipro, they are still dealing with the fires from the night.
We're taking everyone down.
In the regional center, one person was killed and 5 were wounded. 3 of them, all men, are in serious condition. Fires broke out at businesses. Serhiy, the owner of a car service, saw the attack on surveillance cameras and rushed to save the station at his neighbor's property.
I helped them figure out what was where so they could localize the fire as quickly as possible. There were highly flammable materials in the back. I warned them about that. Well, we're just business owners. Who are we? Metal plastic windows. I don't know. A car service? Maybe. It's all the usual stuff. No, it's not a physics facility. People make sports equipment for pull-ups. Some are, transport carriers.
Warehouses and businesses have been destroyed. The office building was smashed up. Here, people are trying to clean up the damaged property.
We're taking out what we can, whatever's needed. We're helping. It's terrible. One of our guys was here at night. 12 hits and, well, it was scary. The guys are shaken up, but alive.
But in Nikopol, 5 people were injured in a double strike. An enemy FPV drone hit a car. While the rescuers were putting out the fire, the occupiers launched another strike. 3 firefighters were injured, as well as a civilian man and woman. In Dnipro and Kryvyi Rih, they're still dealing with the aftermath of the massive attack. At the same time, air defenders shot down more than 24 shahids that the enemy directed at the region. Old Pavlovska, Alexander Kulish, Dnipropetrovsk region, TSN 1+1.
For more than 2 hours, the occupiers continuously shelled Kostiantynivka in Donetsk region. 2 men were killed by barrel artillery fire, and a pensioner was wounded. 6 more people were injured in Kramatorsk. The occupiers terrorized the city with glide bombs and shahids. 4 people were injured in Kupiansk. That's in the Kharkiv region. There, the occupiers attacked ambulances with FPV drones. 3 vehicles were damaged at once. Houses and a fire station were wrecked. In the Kherson region, the Russians shelled the village of Bilazirka with artillery. A man was wounded in his own yard. Drones also attacked the regional center. A local resident suffered blast injuries. Medical assistance was needed for a resident of Canada. That's in the Cherkasy region. The city endured a raid by attack drones. One of the shahids hit an infrastructure facility. Rescuers extinguished the fire. Patriots are on their way to Ukraine. NATO has confirmed the fastest possible transfer of additional air defense systems to our country. The alliance's top general, Alexis Grinkiewicz, stated that preparations are underway for the rapid handover of these systems. The Supreme Commander-in-Chief emphasized that he is currently working very closely on this issue with the German side. Although earlier, the German Ministry of Defense did not confirm the sending of Patriots to Ukraine. Recently, Donald Trump stated that Berlin has already started supplying missiles for these air defense systems. Here is his exact quote: "They are coming from Germany, and then Germany replaces them. And in all cases, the United States receives full payment." Trump said, "Allies will discuss providing additional Patriot systems and the order of deliveries next week at 2 important meetings. On Monday, the contact groups supporting our country will meet in the Ramstein format, and on Wednesday, there will be an expert-level meeting at NATO's military headquarters in Europe." Do you expect that now the Americans will participate more actively in the meetings in Ramstein? And will Trump still be willing to offer weapons to Ukraine if Europe is ready to pay for them? Write everything you think about this in the comments to the TSN episode, and of course, give us a like. Subscribe to the channel, and I'll continue the broadcast. A lot of important things are ahead. The number of people killed as a result of the devastating airstrike in Dobropilya, Donetsk region, has risen to 4. The day before, Russia dropped a half-ton bomb on the city, which hit a shopping center that was crowded with people at the time. According to the latest information, 4 civilians became victims of the terrorists, and another 27 people were injured. A large-scale fire broke out at the site of the impact, engulfing a 2-story store and a nearby 5-story residential building. At this point, it is known that more than 50 commercial pavilions have been damaged. Windows were shattered and damaged in more than 300 apartments across 13 high-rise buildings. The rubble is still being cleared.
An airstrike was carried out with the FAB-500 bomb in the center of Dobropilya, specifically at the Avorozny shopping center, which was open at the time. The second floor collapsed onto the first. Rescue and search operations are currently underway.
It was a restless night in the aggressor country. Long-range drones flew in there. The Russians declared air raid alerts in 11 regions, including at the airports in Moscow and St. Petersburg. Due to the appearance of drones, operations were suspended and the carpet plan was implemented. Several drones were spotted in the sky, but a mass appearance of UAVs was recorded in the border regions of Bryansk and Kursk. In Belgorod, during the operation of Russian air defense, a Russian citizen was killed and 6 others were injured. In Voronezh, 3 people were injured. They say drone debris hit a residential building. Overall, Russian officials report that they shot down 174 drones. How many were actually launched and how many reached their targets, including military facilities, is currently unknown. Ukraine is a leader in drone production. That's how Keith Kellogg, the U.S. Special Representative, assessed Ukrainian drone manufacturing companies, and he wrote about it on X. The day before, together with the heads of the Ministry of Strategic Industries, Kellogg saw the latest innovations in Ukrainian defense tech, including drones that help counter the enemy on the front line and are used for long-range strikes against the adversary. The special representative highly praised the development of Ukrainian manufacturing and emphasized that the United States should pay attention to this and adapt accordingly. Keith Kellogg is in Ukraine on an official visit starting from July 14th in order to gather information about the potential of the Russian army and the prospects of our military. Evacuation under deadly risk. The main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense has shown footage of the conditions in which our defenders save the lives of wounded comrades every day. In this story, a GUR fighter single-handedly held off an assault by 5 Russian occupiers. The Russians even tried to kill him with poisonous gas and subjected him to heavy fire, the agency reports. Eventually, our fighter lost consciousness, but his comrades arrived in time and managed to evacuate the wounded man. The soldier was pulled out of the trench during the battle, transported to the medics in an armored vehicle, and all this time was given first aid. Meanwhile, the soldiers of the 24th King Danilo Brigade are publishing photos of captured Russians. The Korolevaiki captured the invaders in Chase of Yar, near Bakhmut in the Donetsk region. The prisoners are paratroopers from the 98th Division of the aggressor state. The brigade says this unit was considered the elite of the Russian army, with experience in Chechnya, Georgia, and Syria. But now, the ranks of the 98th Division of the Russian Federation are filled with former convicts. On the social media pages of the 24th Brigade, our soldiers once again urge the occupiers to surrender and save their lives. Meanwhile, deep state analysts report that the Russians have occupied Shevchenko and are also pressing near Zeleny Pol, Mern, and Pishchain. This is in Donetsk region, and also around Haidish. This is in Kharkiv region. Overall, in the past day on the front line of the Russian-Ukrainian war, 160 combat clashes were recorded, according to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. In the fierce Pokrovsk direction, our defenders stopped more than 50 assaults to help each other in the event of an armed attack. A treaty with such an obligation was signed today by Germany and Britain. This happened during Chancellor Merz's visit to London. The comprehensive treaty deepens ties between the countries in various fields, from transport to defense. Last August, London and Berlin agreed to reset their cooperation. Chancellor Merz had previously emphasized the commitment to mutual defense. This is a response both to growing Russian aggression and to the uncertainty among European allies about the role of the US and NATO under President Trump. Germany, unlike Britain, does not have its own nuclear weapons, so it relies on the umbrella provided by NATO. However, nuclear weapons are not mentioned directly in the current agreement. But London and Berlin want to jointly develop a new long-range missile system, and they plan for this to happen within the next decade. Russia's responsibility is beyond doubt, declared the chief diplomat of the Netherlands regarding the downing of flight MH17 over Ukraine. He emphasized that Amsterdam remains steadfast in its efforts to establish the truth and achieve justice. The diplomat also stated that they honor the memory of all 298 people who lost their lives, including 196 Dutch citizens. That is how many people died on board flight MH17, which was shot down over Donetsk region in 2014. Last week, the European Court of Human Rights issued a historic ruling in a consolidated case against Russia, which, among other things, addressed the downing of the civilian aircraft. And the court specifically determined that Russia is responsible for shooting down flight MH17 with its Buk missile system. The judges also confirmed that Russia violates human rights, engages in torture, attacks civilians, and suppresses the Ukrainian language in the occupied territories. Today, on the Day of International Criminal Justice, a welcoming ceremony was held in The Hague for Ukraine as the 125th country to join the Rome Statute. The president of the International Criminal Court, Tomoko Akane, who issued an arrest warrant for Putin in March 2023, thanked Ukraine for its cooperation. Meanwhile, Ukraine's ambassador to the Netherlands, Andriy Kostin, stated that the 6 arrest warrants issued for Russian criminals are a strong signal to the world. No one is above the law.
To the restless generation regarding assistance, the movement of crime, and the decision made by Georgia, we have opened our doors to investigators, are facilitating the collection of evidence, and are supporting the voices of victims and those affected. That is why Ukraine warmly welcomes the actions of the International Criminal Court, including the issuance of 6 arrest warrants for Russian officials suspected of committing crimes against humanity and war crimes. The warrant for Putin is especially important and symbolic. This is a signal to all criminals and to the whole world. No one is above the law.
The bodies of another 1,000 people who died have been returned to Ukraine under the Istanbul agreements. The Russian side claims they belong to Ukrainian citizens, including servicemen. This was reported by the Coordination Headquarters for the Treatment of Prisoners of War. After the bodies are returned to the controlled territory, specialists from the Ministry of Internal Affairs will begin identification. And with that, I conclude this edition of TSN. Write in the comments what the temperature is in your city right now and whether you would be happy about a short or even a longer rain. And finally, I'd also like to ask you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bells so you get notifications about our new content. And take a look at the summary. This is what Thursday, July 17th, looked like. Yulia Svyridenko became the Prime Minister of Ukraine. Her candidacy was approved in Parliament. 262 MPs voted in favor. The composition of the new cabinet has also been approved. Mikhailo Fedorov became the first deputy prime minister. The deputy prime ministers are Alexei Kuleba and Terez Kochka. The candidates for the ministers of foreign affairs and defense were voted on separately upon the president's submission. No surprises here. The updated Ministry of Defense will continue to be headed by now former Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal. The occupiers attacked the Dnipropetrovsk region with dozens of shahids. There were explosions all night in the regional center. There, one person was killed and 5 were wounded. In the morning, there were blasts in Kryvyi Rih, and in Nikopol, the occupiers struck twice. Rescuers who arrived to put out the fire were injured. Patriots are on their way to Ukraine. NATO has confirmed the fastest possible deployment of additional air defense systems to our country. At the same time, a meeting of the Ukraine Defense Contact Group in the Ramstein format is scheduled for Monday. The number of people killed as a result of the devastating airstrike in Dobropilya, Donetsk region, has risen to 4. The day before, Russia dropped a half-ton bomb on the city, which hit a shopping center that was crowded at the time. In addition to the 4 killed, 27 people were wounded there.
The second floor collapsed onto the first. Rescue and search operations are currently underway.
An air raid alert was declared overnight in 11 regions of Russia. In Moscow and St. Petersburg airports, flights were suspended due to the appearance of UAVs. In Belgorod, during the operation of local air defense systems, 1 Russian was killed and 6 were wounded. Overall, enemy officials claimed that 174 drones were shot down. A cadet shot instructors of the armed forces of Ukraine in the Chernihiv region. Police report that during shooting practice at the training center, the soldier aimed an automatic weapon at the instructors and opened fire. 2 servicemen were killed. The suspect was detained, and his motives are being investigated. In Lviv, doctors performed a unique double heart transplant operation. A 20-year-old patient underwent 2 consecutive transplants. First, his own heart failed. The donor heart didn't take, and in just 2 days they managed to find another one. It was transplanted successfully.
Since we didn't have time, we decided to take the risk.
Mass poisoning in Lviv. The number of victims is rising. Currently there are 56, including 8 children.
I started feeling really bad. I lost consciousness.
All of them had eaten at a Chinese restaurant that had only been open for 2 days since its launch. The owner of the establishment was also poisoned and is currently hospitalized. Short-term rains and thunderstorms are heading towards Ukraine. The skies will open up in the west, center, and south of the country, forecasters promise. At the same time, the temperature will noticeably drop. The rains are expected to stop at the beginning of next week.